Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. And today we are talking about Inter Miami's 2-1 victory over the Columbus Crew. We didn't have Lionel Messi. We didn't have Luis Suarez. We didn't have Matias Rojas. We didn't have Federico Redondo. We didn't have Diego Gomez. We didn't have Chelo Wigan. We didn't have David Ruiz. We didn't have Toto Aviles. And we didn't have probably two or three other guys. But off the top of my head, that's a pretty solid starting lineup that I just labeled. And we didn't have any of them. And we brought in the Columbus Crew. They came to town with almost a full roster. And they left, tail between their legs, 0 points, momentum stopped, nervous that they can't do anything against this Inter Miami team. They were dominated by a player making his 15th professional game, first in over a year. They were dominated by a backup striker that has their number, and a super draft pick in the midfield that destroyed everything they were trying to do. What a feeling it is to be an Inter Miami fan. And I have to tell you, I really enjoyed seeing a lot of Columbus fans complain last night because they didn't understand why they were struggling so much. I feel great. And as always, I'm your host, Scotty, and I'm here with my co-host, Saur. How are you feeling tonight?
You know, I had a very long day at work. I had a few things to do. I was tired. And then I remembered Inter Miami got all 3 points yesterday against Columbus Crew. I came back home. I rewatched that game. And Jesus, I was so refreshed. What a performance, dude. What an absolute monster of a performance. I don't think I felt so proud watching my team play. I can't believe we actually won this, man. I can't believe it.
I know. It was awesome. It was, we generally do this podcast the day after so that we have a chance to rewatch the game, really think through it, rewatch like 5 or 10 minute periods that we think were really important to get a sense of, exactly what happened. And so that we can provide a little bit better analysis when we talk to all of you. But last night I was thinking like, man, I just want to get on and just start talking about this game because it was awesome. Yeah, excitement through the roof. Let's get through a little house cleaning before, because there are a couple topics that we haven't really touched on yet. The lineup came out a little bit early, so we didn't have time during the pregame show yesterday. But let's get this stuff out of the way so that we can talk about that magnificently fun game. Earlier this week, Inter Miami hired Raul Sanyehi to be the new executive president of football operations for Inter Miami. This is a guy with experience at Barcelona, Arsenal, most recently at Real Zaragoza. And now he's joining Inter Miami to sort of head up a football sporting department in a way that Inter Miami doesn't currently have. And I think, at least if it goes as I kind of expect it to, it could be really interesting for what happens with the club.
Yeah, I think it's a good direction for sure. A lot of clubs are moving towards this sports director, president sort of a model where a lot of the footballing decisions come from the top and then the coach can just coach and doesn't need to be a out and out manager. I don't know how his position will be different from Chris Henderson, who's responsible for the recruiting and stuff, but seems like a good move, man. And I'm very much in favor of having a top-down sports structure with the executives having a lot of responsibilities in the sporting decisions of the team. So overall, I think a positive outcome, and I'm sure it's going to lead to better recruitment, better overall functioning of the club.
Yeah, this does feel like the trend in, for big clubs these days. And honestly, you can see how this person could be responsible for something that no one's really responsible for right now. Inter Miami doesn't have a technical director. And so I imagine this person, Sanyehi, will be responsible for hiring a technical director, creating a style of play that can survive the generations and not just be based on one coach's idea, which is what we've had for most of our history. I did an episode of The Heartbeat on this. So if you guys want a more in-depth conversation on this, it's 25 minutes. You can find that on your podcast app of choice. We don't need to spend too much time talking about it right now because we have more important and impressive things to talk about. Before we do, though, I want to say one more thing. It sounds like two of our star young midfielders are on their way back to health. both Diego Gomez and Yannick Bright. I'm sorry, Diego Gomez and Federico Redondo, both seemingly on the mend and could be available for our next game against Nashville SC on not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. We get a nice 10-day break here. That was a Freudian slip, no doubt about it. But yeah, Federico Redondo hasn't been long since we've seen him, but Diego Gomez has been, almost 2 months. It's going to be really nice to have him back in that midfield because he's phenomenal. You're on mute.
I don't even remember the last time I saw Diego Gomez in that midfield. A couple of months ago, a while ago. He went out at a time when Inter Miami was on the up, and he's coming back at a time when Inter Miami's on the up, mate. So he's just going to come back in and absolutely bolster the score, isn't he? I can't wait for him to be back. And then Redondo is Redondo. Hopefully he gets back into good form soon. And I still like him as a player. I think he has a lot to offer to this team. And it's scary times for the other teams. It really is.
He got hurt against Nashville on April 20th. So today is exactly 2 months since his injury. And I do think we're going to see him back on this next road trip. Yeah, amazing midfielder. And I think if we put him in a midfield with Sergio Busquets and Yannick Bright, it would be really special and dynamic in a way that we haven't even seen yet. And we've seen a lot of really good midfielders play this year. Anything else, though, before we get into the game? Because that's what we're all here to talk about.
Let's get started, man, because there's so much we need to talk about.
Yeah. When we were talking about this in the pregame, we thought that a 3-5-2 was the likely formation. We thought Christoph, Noah Allen, and Ian Fray were going to be that trio in the back. We'd get Julian Gressel on the right and Jordi Alba on the left, midfield of Yannick Bright, Kramaski, and Sergio Busquets with a front two of Campana and Taylor. And at least I was dreading the idea that was going to be our lineup. And fortunately, it's not. We spent most of the hour trying to come up with potential ways that this could make sense where we didn't have to go with the 3-5-2. And Tata fooled us all, including the Columbus crew and Wilfred Nancy, by pulling out a 5-2-3, something we haven't seen this year so far. This was not the back three that Tata had employed earlier in the season. This was a new formation. First time we've seen it this year, and it was awesome. As soon as, 10 minutes into the game, you could see why this was working, and we'll talk all about it. But give me your thoughts on this lineup now that we actually know what the formation is.
Yeah, it was a little bit more fluid than just a rigid 5-2-3. I think Gressel was drifting in and out of the midfield, which was working really well because he was actually a key role player in that transition. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. The best he's looked all season. So dangerous on that right side of the pitch. And yeah, he didn't come in centrally. He was staying on that right side, but he was going down the flanks a lot, which you would want from your winger. And when we were in possession, it was slightly more of a 3-4-3 rather than a 5 at the back and building slowly. So we weren't necessarily as much of a low block and as much of a back five as you would expect. It was a bit of a fluid, dynamic formation, but our defense was so solid, man. That back five, as soon as we lost the ball, everyone was in position, and there just seemed to be so much cover and stability in all sides of the pitch. And I felt, yes, we were open at times, and it was an open game, especially at the start of the first 20 minutes. It was quite back and forth, but I thought we were a lot more compact and narrow compared to Columbus, who at times very, very spacious, and we had so much space to exploit. We could have had 3 in the first 25 minutes.
Yeah, we could have. I want to talk about Ian Fray because to me he was the key, the linchpin to this entire system. I know you mentioned that sometimes it looked like a back four, but I disagree. I didn't think Busquets ever stepped up into the midfield today.
Back 3. I didn't say back 4.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't think Busquets ever.
Fray and Alba were pushing up. But Busquets was always in that defense. He never pushed up, not once.
Yeah. And I think that was really smart from Tata Martino because it created something that Columbus wasn't expecting, and it put your two smartest defensive center backs, if you want to include Busquets in that conversation, against these very dangerous and dynamic attackers that are very intelligent, make really smart runs, and are really creative in where they position themselves. And so not forcing Ian Fray and Noah Allen to be responsible for those as part of that back line, and instead giving them, at least giving one of them, Ian Fray, a simpler task defensively, or at least a more straightforward task. I thought that was brilliant. And furthermore, having only two midfielders instead of three, and I know Julian Gressel dropped back, and I know when they were really dropping low, it was more of like a 5-4-1 or even like a 5-5, but having only two midfielders, at least in the center of the park while the game was open, I think confused Columbus and made it really difficult for them to play the positional play that they're so good at, because they love to build numbers advantages in order to play through midfields. Tata Martino said, go ahead, do it, play through our midfield, because we're going to set up our back line so that it's not going to matter if you do. And we're going to set up a three-man front line. I think you're on mute again, but we're going to set up a three-man front line in order to press you in the back where you are most vulnerable. And if you do get the ball in the midfield, and if you get comfortable there, go ahead, because we'll be stout defensively. Let's just get into the big moments of the game. I think the first one that really caught my eye, and Ian Fray is going to be a big subject of conversation for this episode, but in the 7th minute, Cucho Hernandez gets the ball down that left side, or down Ian Fray's side, and really drives at Fray. Fray chasing him down, does so, and keeps the ball in front of him, tracks him down, makes the stop so that Cucho can't get a good shot off, and makes the play so that defensively we were sound. And I think that was really important from Ian Fray at the beginning to get him a little bit of confidence. And at least it was important for me feeling confident about Ian Fray so that he was going to be able to handle himself defensively. He still had the athleticism, the pace. I know we've seen it in the for the B team over the last couple of weeks, but you never really know how that's going to translate from the B team to the A team. So yeah, anything on those first 10 minutes? You good? You back?
Sorry, I was having some technical issues. I'm not sure if you can hear me properly now, but the internet is not coping up with me. Feels like everyone's too excited to talk about this game. I think it was a great start for me, because we started we knew that we were going to be, on the cosh. Columbus is going to have a lot of the ball, but I thought we looked fantastic in transition. When we had the ball, we were keeping it really well. We were passing it around. It was really fluid, and there were so many out balls that we had, especially with Campana and Robert Taylor making those runs. I thought we looked absolutely fantastic. Ian Fray was, I think, one of the big reasons why we played out from the back, but played so well on the ball, because every time he had the ball, he just looked phenomenal. He looked so comfortable on it, and he would beat his man space and then pop a really good ball all the way out to Robert Taylor, and that would just create so much space. And there was space in behind that Columbus team, because they were pushing up and Miami was letting them push up. The issue that we've had in so many of these games is that when we're compact, when we're sitting back, yes, we play a little bit, but sometimes it breaks down in the midfield. The passes are off. Today, all passes were right on point, and it just goes to show, if you can keep your pass percentage high and if you can find the right pass, our players are so dangerous in front of goal. They will create opportunities.
Absolutely. And I think you made a good point with Ian Fray. Going back to our lineup conversation, I think Tata found a way to really protect him, but do it in a way where he still had the opportunity to advance the ball and be, creative and be a good passer and have good vision and be dangerous going forward. And I really love that for Ian Fray. I was very nervous about him going into the game. I thought it was a bad matchup, but I thought Tata put him in a position to succeed, and I want to give him credit for that. And succeed he did in the 10th minute. Inter Miami earns a corner. Julian Gressel puts it in. Ian Fray finds himself completely unmarked and has a simple header past Patrick Schulte for the goal. Inter Miami goes up 1-0 early. And for a game that felt like it was going to be very difficult, it felt like we were playing a really good team. And maybe that's just because we hyped ourselves up in the pregame about how good Columbus was, because we certainly
We were
did that.
so nervous, man. So nervous.
The nerves were high, but the energy was high. And so when you're in a situation like that, if you get a breakthrough goal, the excitement is amazing. The fact that it was Ian Fray of all players was amazing. What a moment of just joy for almost any Inter Miami fan in that moment, because you get not just an opening goal against a really good team that you thought you were the underdogs against, but also you get it from Ian Fray and the tremendous story that embodies what he's gone through.
Yeah, I'm looking at the first half stats, and they had 66% possession that half, and it felt like we were the more dangerous team. Yes, at the start it was like, okay, Columbus is doing Columbus and they're eventually going to break us, but I thought our counter attack was absolutely phenomenal. Julian Gressel, big points to him for actually stepping up, because I thought he was our best players in that one of our best players in that first half, because him taking responsibility in that midfield when there weren't too many people around him, and then putting in a really good ball across field or across to Campana, or just finding the right cross that gives us a little bit of breathing space. I think he allowed us to get off pressure. So even though Columbus wanted to, win the ball back, we were finding outlets very easily. And I think Gressel was a really big part of that. He plays really well in space, and he found that space yesterday. He found a lot of playing space to make a difference in this game.
I've talked about this for the last week or two since this break without Messi, and I thought that right wing spot when we're playing sort of more defensively is going to be the prime role for Julian Gressel, and so far so good. And speaking of Julian Gressel, let's fast forward to the 21st minute, where there's a really fun sequence of events for Inter Miami fans and just as an MLS fan. The 21st minute, Julian Gressel, like you mentioned, played an excellent ball forward to Leo Campana, who's hitting in transition. He gets a nice shot off. It is saved by Patrick Schulte. But Campana feels the rebound, taps off a nice little ball to Robert Taylor, who's running in 7 yards in front of goal for an easy tap in. And yet Robert Taylor kind of messes it up. He mistimes it. Fortunately, it does go off for a corner. And I was really nervous. I was really upset at this moment because I thought, we had a perfect opportunity to go up 2-0, and we wasted it. And then in the ensuing corner, it comes out. We put the ball in, it comes back out, but Benjamin Kramaski puts immediate pressure on the ball, which creates a little bit of a bad pass. Ian Fray sees the opportunity, makes a sliding tackle to break up the reception. The ball lands back at Kramaski's feet, who tries to put in a cross. The cross gets pushed out a little bit, but it then lands at Julian Gressel's feet, who takes a step to his right and then puts in a cross to Leo Campana. Campana smashes it in with his header. That was a goal right there, but the officials said not good enough. Schulte pushes it out, and Campana says, okay, how about this? 2-0 Inter Miami in the 21st minute. That was awesome.
I want to go back to the 21st minute and just acknowledge that ball from Gressel, because I had my jaw hanging off when I saw that. It was beautiful. Coming to the goal, was it the first instance that actually went in that was given a goal, or was it the second instance where he finally got it into the net that was given a goal?
It was the second instance, and I'm sure Julian Gressel's upset about that because he should have had 2 assists on the night.
He should have had 2 assists.
I think if that second goal, if the second shot doesn't go in, they review it, and I think it would have been a goal because it looked like it passed. And by the way, if you go back and look at the replay, after Campana's header in, Julian Gressel turns around and starts celebrating like he just got an assist, and he misses the entire second part of that play. So he had that sideline view. I'm sure he thought it was a goal.
Yeah, Julian Gressel was a man on a mission, and then Campana just did what Campana does best, and that's hustle and make sure he gets that ball across the line somehow or the other. We seem to be all over them in the final third, man. They were really surprised by how dynamic we were. And I thought there are 2 ways to play a game of football. Well, there are many ways to play a game of football, but there are 2 ways to play counter-attacking. Sometimes you play counter-attacking that you're just completely shut out in your box and find it really difficult to try and get out, and the pressure is on, and then you just hope and pray that there's one ball that comes through and you're able to run out with it and make a chance. This seemed like it was the second way, where we were actually being so smart in the way that we were pushing when we needed to, sitting back when we needed to, because our front three and like our front four was still pushing up and pressing into the opposition. They were like being, dynamic, and they were getting in their faces from time to time. But the way they balanced that, the way they found their opportunities to try and get out at the right time, find the right passes at the right time, the decision making in this game was very, very impressive, and something that I've really criticized this team before on. And I was pleasantly surprised by how well everyone was thinking throughout the game, because yes, you have an opportunity, but you may pass it completely off. And that's not what was happening.
Yeah, you're right. Some teams can just sit back and defend with 10 men and try and break with 2 or 3 players on the counter. That's not what Inter Miami did in this game. And we'll talk about what they actually did to create so many opportunities, especially in that first half, when we get to our tactics conversation. But yeah, you're right. Inter Miami was, even though their goal was to be defensively sound and play that back five really well structured, they were not afraid to be on the front foot in doing what they wanted to do. They didn't just allow the Columbus Crew to dictate play, as Columbus likes to do. Drake Callender made a phenomenal save in the 24th minute when Cucho Hernandez found himself free on a direct ball. Ian Fray had a really nice moment in the 34th minute that you already sort of described, but he sort of steps around and dribbles past Yaya Boa, who is by no means slow, and then just bodies him off and takes off and just outruns him down the sideline. And then he puts in a perfect cross to Robert Taylor. Taylor ended up taking a shot, but it was right at Schulte. And then in the 40th minute, Aiden Morris puts in the cross to Cucho Hernandez, who scores. That's Columbus's one goal of the game. How are you feeling at this point? Because even though we had gotten 2 early goals, neither of them felt like goals that we earned from just dominating the game. They were both just sort of happenstance goals, or, maybe not repeatable type situations. So I didn't feel like when we went up 2-0, we were on the road to a 4 or 5 goal performance. It felt like we had gotten the goals we needed, but not that we were just going to dominate the game from there on out. So when Columbus does get one back, it's a little nervy because suddenly Inter Miami is no longer just in control of the game in terms of the scoreboard.
Yeah, I'll caveat that a little bit, because the way that we scored, that was the game plan, right? It wasn't like we didn't. It wasn't like we were lucky. We knew exactly what we were doing, and we took our chances when we created them, right? But the problem was that you knew Columbus is going to figure us out. They're going to find us out, and what we're doing might not work. That was the question, and that's why I think there was a level of discomfort, or and a feeling that, oh, this may not be like a 4-0 game, because this might not be a sustainable model to play against them throughout the 90 minutes. So I agree with you. I was nervous, and I was fully expecting to be found out in the second half. I thought Columbus was going to come back and potentially draw this game. I think 2-0 is the most dangerous scoreline in the history of football, and I don't trust my teams when they go up 2-0. So this Inter Miami team, lacking so many players, could easily have conceded 2 or 3 goals in that second half and lost concentration, because that's what it was about. You had to be perfect on the night to be able to beat this Columbus team. And by perfect, I mean the players, tactics, in-game changes, substitutions, all needed to be on board to stop this Columbus team. So I was nervous. Going into halftime, I was like, I don't know how long we sustain this.
I definitely felt at halftime we were going to need one more to win this game.
Yeah.
And I was wrong. 44th minute, the last play of the first half, I think worth mentioning. Then we had another corner, and Ian Fray again found himself unmarked and got his head to goal and put another shot on target, but this time right at Schulte. Second half, not a ton for Inter Miami going the other way. And I do think we were more conservative in the second half, probably because of energy levels, but we'll talk about it. There was an opportunity for Christian Ramirez for Columbus in the 62nd minute, but Drake Callender was in a nice position to make the save. In the 65th minute, Yaya Boa does put a nice little juke move and gets Ian Fray to spin the wrong way and dribbles into the box, tries to draw a penalty. I didn't think it was a penalty. I thought it was pretty weak, but it was at least nervy. It did go to VAR. They did check it out, but ultimately not a penalty. 71st minute, Diego Rossi gets loose in the box, but Ryan Saylor with a really nice tackle from behind to save that play. It was about 8 yards out, and Diego Rossi's getting ready to fire. And then the last big one in the 79th minute, Morera for them puts a really nice find, really great vision to find Cucho Hernandez right at the back line, unmarked. Cucho receives it and then is wide open in the box. And then Drake Callender with another really important save to keep that to 2-1. And then we kind of saw it the rest of the game relatively pain-free. Anything else from that second half that caught your eye or you wanted to make note of?
No, you mentioned that. And second half, we were a lot more conservative and the energy levels were just not there. I think the dynamism that we saw in that first half, getting out from the back when we needed to, running into the spaces, it felt like we were a little bit leggy, a little bit slower. And I had my fist in my mouth, man. I genuinely thought that this Columbus team is going to score. A lot of good defensive play from our players. Ryan Saylor stepping up when needed to. Drake Callender making phenomenal saves in very crucial moments in the game. And at that point, it just felt like it's meant to be our game to win, man. And Columbus just was frustrated. They tried, but they just didn't have enough in the locker.
Well, let's talk about Columbus because we hyped them up a lot in the pregame show. Because I still think they're a very good team, but I think that there's a distinctive way to beat this Columbus Crew team, and Inter Miami employed that style last night. I think that if we had Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, and if we were playing our typical style of play, it could have been a much different result, simply because stylistically, I think they match up very well against what we do typically. But last night, we sat really low. We didn't give them space in behind, and that's something they really specialize on. And they did hit us once or twice with in behind, but not on a consistent basis because we were playing deep, low, and tight in a way that we made it very difficult for them to do that. And they didn't have a ton of ideas once they had the ball in the final third. If it wasn't in if they were going up against a structured defense and a settled-in defense, they didn't have a ton of ideas on how to break it down.
Here's a stat for you. So in the first half, we had 4 big chances created compared to Columbus's 0 or 1 big chance for them. And we had 10 shots on target. In the second half, we had 0 big chances. They had 1 and they had 9 total shots. So that just goes to show the disparity in the first half versus second half in terms of our chance creation. It just felt a lot more threatening in that second half. And it was a little bit of a squeaky bum time, as Sir Alex Ferguson would say. But this is what good games are made of, man. Sometimes you just got to dig in and you got to find the results from somewhere. And we held on to that, those 2 goals and did not let them concede. And I completely agree with the point that when you sit further back against this Columbus team, it kind of takes away from the positives that their front 4 have, or essentially their entire attack has, which is running in around, being dynamic and running at you, either with the ball or without the ball. And Rossi does that really well. Ramirez does that relatively well. Cucho Hernandez has really good movement. And they've really struggled to find those spaces to pull our defenders away. And with that 5-man back line, it just felt like they had a wall facing them. And they just didn't have an answer.
Yeah, there are just teams that are better against good competition and sometimes struggle against bad competition because the bad competition doesn't try and establish their style of play on the game. They just do what's hard for that team to compete against. And that's why I think Columbus has gotten so many plaudits, because they can go to Mexico and compete with those teams and outplay them when it's an even matchup, or when they're playing against a team that's maybe slightly better than them, right? Against the best teams in MLS last year in the playoffs, etc. But when a team plays in a way that's designed to stress out Columbus and to make it difficult for them based on how Columbus wants to play, I think they don't have that sort of individual brilliance to overcome that on a consistent basis. And so I do think that's the key to being in Columbus. And I hope we employ something similar when we play them again in October and potentially in the playoffs.
Isn't it an irony, though? This Inter Miami team, when we play our best starting 11, when we've got Messi and Luis Suarez, we actually struggle against a low block. And it just so happens that.
No, but it's the same thing, right? It's the same
Yeah,
reason.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's just that
So-
we have much better talent in terms of breaking down the final third, right? That's New England did that to us. We broke them down. Nashville did that to us. We broke them down. And so even when teams try and low block against us, it does get frustrating. And sometimes it's very effective, like what DC United did to us a couple weeks ago. But when you have Lionel Messi and when you have Sergio Busquets and Suarez and some of the guys that we have, it becomes possible to break it down in a way that, as good as the Columbus Crew players are, it's still very difficult for them because they're not these world-class players. After the game, Tata Martino mentioned that he said to the team before the game that we're playing a better team than us, and so we have to play a certain style. And Sergio Busquets kind of reiterated that in his post-game quote, saying that they knew that this was the best team in MLS, which is a huge compliment for the Columbus Crew and Sergio Busquets to give to them. But that was a dynamic part of what Inter Miami knew going into the game. And very rarely this season have we decided we should just sit off and try and play more defensive. We feel like we can be the best team and aggressor and put our style of play on the game almost every game. And this was one of the few exceptions. The team knew that going in. So I don't think we were overestimating who the Columbus Crew were in the pregame. I just think that we played the right style. We got really good performances across the board. And I think we confused the Columbus Crew a little bit from what they were expecting and from what they usually deal with.
And I think, yeah, you mentioned this during our pregame show that if we choose to play the right style against Columbus Crew, we will have a chance, right? The only issue with this Inter Miami team and with Tata Martino is you don't know when he actually decides to switch up tactics and when he actually decides to be tactically flexible, because he actually confuses me as a coach a lot. Sometimes he's so stubborn and he refuses to change things, like putting Gressel every single time in that midfield. And then sometimes he just shows up with this masterclass of a performance. And maybe that has something to do with ego against maybe lesser teams. He's unwilling to play around with formation and thinks that we can actually defeat them just by our quality. And then against better teams like Columbus, who, let's be honest, were on paper the better team on the night, he decides to actually try and make a tactical difference and not let this team just be. And I feel like when this team has a plan in mind, when each player has a responsibility, and yesterday it felt like every single player knew exactly what they wanted to do and where they needed to be, this team looks a lot better. So both of us agreed to the fact that this game is going to be difficult, but if you have the correct game plan in place, this Columbus team is beatable. We just didn't know whether Inter Miami had it in them to play that game plan.
Yeah, and I don't think we had a ton of confidence when we saw the lineup either, because if we had played a 3-5-2 in the same style that we had played earlier this season, we would have been torn apart last night. And so, yeah, credit to Tata for not doing that, and credit to the guys. I didn't think Columbus had a particularly bad game. I think they got a little turnover happy in the first half, but not like in a way that felt like they were just playing way below their standards. Whereas I thought Inter Miami played really well. Sometimes you have games where you feel like everyone's turning the ball over, everyone's having a bad game, and sometimes you feel like you just went up against a good team and you just couldn't make the plays when you had those few opportunities because the other team made it really difficult. And I felt like it was that type of game, and I think most Columbus Crew fans would say, not that they got played off the pitch or anything like that, but that we still made it very difficult for them. And when it came time to convert, they didn't, because we made it very difficult for them and we didn't give them a ton of chances to do that. So I still think it's a very good team. I will say I think we may have put them away in terms of the supporter shield last night. And I know that's a very bold statement to say, but I think Columbus, when they finished the CONCACAF Champions Cup, they said, okay, if we can go on a run, we can get right back into it in terms of the supporter shield race. But last night they fell back. So all of a sudden their games in hand don't get them all the way to the top. I think they're going to really struggle to catch Miami and Cincinnati. And oh, by the way, the last two teams they lost to in the MLS, Inter Miami and Cincinnati. I think we may have just put Columbus away for the supporter shield for the season. And I think they may decide, third place still there. We can still get home field advantage in the first round, but I think we made it very difficult for them to go all the way to the top. And I also think that might make it very difficult for them to repeat as MLS Cup champions if they have to go through both Cincinnati and Miami on the road. I really think last night was a big game for the Columbus Crew, at least once they lost. So we might come back to that conversation.
It's a 6.10. So obviously that's a big deal. It just gives Inter Miami that extra boost that we need on the top of the table. I think it's too early to say whether Columbus is going to be in the mix or not, but I do think it's going to be very hard for them to finish at the top. They might finish top 3, but we've got Cincinnati as well. Miami.
Oh, yeah. Third place, I think, is definitely there for them. I think Cincinnati and Inter Miami are going to be really tough to catch, especially considering they've already played one of their 2 games against them, and they dropped.
And I'm looking at the current lineup of games that Columbus has. It's not as difficult. They've got Kansas City, New England, Nashville, Toronto, Los Angeles FC.
Yeah,
so they're winnable games, but they could drop points. They could easily drop points.
There's like a psychological thing where all of a sudden, if you feel like you're not in it, it gets a little easier to realize like, oh, this midseason MLS game isn't do or die.
As important,
and that's sort of this attitude you have to take if you want to really go for the supporter shield, especially in a year where you have a star-studded team like Inter Miami. FC Cincinnati just refuses to lose. I don't know if you saw their game last night, but Philadelphia tied it in the 91st minute. And I was watching this game on MLS 360 or whatever it's called.
And then they scored 2 minutes later.
And then Cincinnati scored a minute before the game ended. So frustrating. Anyways,
I know.
Let's not talk about them. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about the tactics, man. We set up in this 5-2-3. I think that was sort of the base when you put it up on the chalkboard. That's how it fits. I thought it was really exciting because we were stout defensively. We had that back 5, and it was 5 defenders. I know Jordi Alba is more of an attacking fullback, but it wasn't anybody playing sort of a role that they weren't comfortable with, or they didn't have the athleticism for, or they didn't have the brain power for. But I don't think we parked the bus, unlike what Ash is saying. What we did with our front 5, our 3 attackers and our 2 midfielders, is we pressed very effectively high up the pitch. And that was the key. And when we were talking earlier about how some teams just totally park the bus and some teams have like sort of a hybrid model, that's what we did last night. And it wasn't just our front 5, but really the fullbacks Sardo got into it a little bit too. And we were very effective at putting pressure on their back line and their goalkeeper. And we forced a lot of turnovers in the first half, which gave us plenty of opportunities in transition off of quick turnovers. I thought putting 2 midfielders in the midfield confused the Columbus Crew and their back line. And, the Columbus Crew, it's a positional play team, and they're really, really well disciplined and good passers, but they expect things to happen in certain patterns, and that's how they play through it because they're very comfortable and they know exactly what to do. And by mixing it up, putting only 2 midfielders in the midfield and then pressing the weakest passers, which were their back 3 and their goalkeeper, we made it very difficult for them to progress the ball. We made it very difficult for them to get comfortable. And most importantly, we created a few turnovers, which gave us a lot of our early opportunities. So to me, that was really the strategy in the first half. And it was a little different in the second half, but that high press, that high press hybrid that fell back into a low block was really effective. And I wanted to talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. The biggest difference from last night's game compared to what we've usually done with the 3-5-2 is the spacing in the back line. We've always had the issue where when we play 3-5-2, our back line is so far spread that there's an absolute middle gap in between that teams can use and utilize and exploit and get in behind us very easily. And that was the worry we had yesterday, right? If we play a back three, if we play a full out 3-5-2, it's going to really, really struggle, because then Columbus is going to be able to exploit those spaces in behind. But we had a back five. Like even Sergio Busquets was not leaving that back five behind. So that gives you a level of width in your defense that allows to clog up those spaces. And you made a fantastic point about the first half, especially the pressing. Our pressing triggers, we weren't pressing like random. We weren't running around like headless chickens. The pressing triggers were perfect in that first half. Whether it was coming from Kramaski, whether it was coming from Taylor and Campana. Taylor and Campana were hounding their backline in that first half. They were all over them. And we created, 4 chances off the turnover, and then you get the ball into Gressel, who has a really fantastic delivery on him, and everything he hit yesterday was going straight into the feet of somebody. There was like 3 or 4 times, and one of those was when Ian Fray passed Yeboah and had this really good, gorgeous-looking crossfield ball to Robert Taylor. That's exactly what we were doing. Winning the ball in good spaces, and then instead of playing through a clogged space, we were switching it to an empty area of the field that gave some of our runners a lot of freedom on the ball to try and then attack the backline. And I thought it was one of the best tactical setups that we've had all season, because you could exactly see how everyone was comfortable playing in positions. And we weren't turning the ball over because we weren't playing in clogged spaces. We were playing in areas where there was a lot of freedom and grass to actually run with the ball. So that worked out really, really well for us.
Well, yes, absolutely. And the other thing was we weren't trying to possess the ball in great large quantities, right? We were comfortable pushing the ball forward. And then if we lost it, we had a back five that was set up to defend well. We weren't using our back line to try and maintain possession, where all of a sudden one bad turnover and you get caught out of position. Like that wasn't happening last night. And that's what we see so often. We were narrow in the back three. Our fullbacks dropped deep to make sure we covered the entire width of the pitch. But yeah, I really thought this game was won by giving up the midfield as opposed to trying to win the midfield. And I thought that was really tactically brilliant. I thought when they got the ball in the midfield, Alex Maiton, Darlington Nagbe, Aiden Morse, they didn't have these triggers on how to break it through it because it was not open, but they didn't have to play like this beautiful style, and they didn't have to play positional ball just to progress the ball. And it was really nice from Tata. I thought that really confused them. Darlington Nagbe and Aiden Morris were particularly poor, I think, in this game in terms of keeping the ball safe. And then that back three, yeah.
I was going to say Darlington Nagbe, didn't even notice him during the game, which is a statement in itself. I will say though, like there were instances in the first half where we did slightly push a little bit higher than we would have normally felt comfortable to do. And that there were instances where they got in behind us, and there were runners who were, free on goal a couple of times and had the opportunities. But it wasn't like they were completely through. There was still an Inter Miami defender either in line or ahead to cover in behind. Like Ian Fray had a couple of really good recovery runs, especially at the start of the game. Noah Allen, I thought was quietly very impressive, especially on a yellow card from the first half onwards. He handled himself brilliantly. And then Christoph as well, man, stalwart of a defender. You didn't notice him a single time during that game, but I thought he was a really key piece of that back line, because without him, we wouldn't have been as organized as we normally are. And then Sergio Busquets, when you have a defender in there who can actually play and outball really well, I think the reason he was put in there was as soon as we recover the ball, pass it off to Sergio Busquets, who can then get it up the field very quickly and get us out of pressure. And I think that was the plan. First half, that's how it worked, I think. Second half was slightly different.
I completely agree. And think about what the Columbus Crew are best at, right? They're great at playing through midfield. They're great at putting balls in behind. They're great at those through balls with those runners playing right at the edge, and they get one-on-ones that way. And so what did we do? We didn't create problems in the midfield for them, so they didn't play through anybody and then create numerical advantages going forward. And then we sat really deep and sturdy And like you said, we always had our man, we always had everyone marked so that they couldn't get those runners in behind. So basically, their two most effective attributes, or the two things they do best, we just took away by not even competing against them in one, and by just outmanning them in the other. I thought it was brilliant. And then having the front three that could consistently press was also huge. Something that we couldn't do with Messi and Suarez, because they don't have that, defensive capacity, and they bring tremendous and otherworldly other things to the table. So it's not a slight on them, but they couldn't have fit this system. It was perfect for the players we had available to us. And so again, I just want to give Tata Martino a lot of credit for.
Can I make a bold statement here? And
go ahead.
You can hammer me for this if you want, but I don't think we would have been as effective if Luis Suarez was instead of Leo Campana.
No doubt about it.
Because Leo Campana's ability to come back and hold the ball and harass the defenders and allow runners to go in behind him and just control and give us an option up top as a target man was so useful in this game. Because as soon as we booted the ball out, it wasn't like it was being booted into space. It was being booted right onto the boots of Leo Campana. And then he could have played out from there on. So it was, I think, a much needed Leo Campana game, and I'm glad he was able to get a goal because he worked really hard.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And whenever we did have a little bit of trouble and we were struggling to clear the ball, we could just get one powerful foot on it in Campana's direction, and you could feel good about him having a good chance to bring it down and retain possession. I think he makes Drake Callender a better goalkeeper, because all of a sudden Drake Callender just knows in the back of his mind, if something goes bad in possession, I can just boot it forward to Campana and we still have a good chance of keeping possession. Substitutes, 67th minute, Ryan Sailor comes in for Ian Fray. Ian Fray has not played more than 61 minutes since he came back from his rehab, so there was no way he was going to go longer than that in that game. I was curious what Tata Martino was going to do, because we didn't have a natural right back replacement. Even a guy who might be able to do that, and David Ruiz wasn't available. So, and then of course Chelo Wigan wasn't available. So I was curious to see what Tata Martino was going to do. Ultimately, it was Ryan Sailor at right back. Even as the substitution was happening, I thought there was maybe a chance Noah Allen went out there. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, because Ryan Sailor against Yaya Boa is an interesting matchup, but Sailor was great.
He did them in a couple of times. Like Yaya Boa had a couple of nutmegs in the bloody box, and I was like, oh my Lord, this guy's going to go.
He did, but I want to give Sailor credit, because in the last 15 minutes, he had like 2 or 3 clearances or headers away to just get the ball out of danger. And so I thought Sailor did the job that he had to do last night. I also thought in the first 3 or 4 minutes that he was on, they went to Yaya Boa 2 or 3 times. And I was like, oh, this is going to be tough. This is going to be a tough 20 minutes. But then they stopped after those first 2 or 3 possessions. So maybe that was a sort of mistake from Columbus to stop going that direction. And then in the 76th minute, Robert Taylor and Campana come off for Schneider Borgen and Leo Alfonso. I thought Leo Alfonso for Robert Taylor was a great one, because Taylor was done. He made a full-on run to try and create something in transition, and then you could see he just couldn't make the run back to get defense.
Again, underrated performance. He maybe could have got a goal, but I thought he was really, really good in terms of the pressing that he was doing, in terms of the danger that he was creating in front of goal. Maybe not his best performance, but he worked his butt off. So I was very happy with his performance. But Schneider Borgelin, talk to me about him for a second, because I was impressed by him for a couple of times, because he ran with the ball really well, which I didn't know he was capable of doing. But he was really good at getting the ball out a couple of times and actually getting in front of goal. I don't know if it led to a goal-scoring opportunity, but I remember when he ran to the byline and had a cross in, which I don't think came off. Anything came off it. But I thought he was good coming off the bench, and for someone who hasn't played in a while.
I don't know about this sub. I think I'd have to know what Campana was feeling, because I don't think Borgelin brings anything that Campana doesn't already have, because even though Borgelin is a big body and he's
fresh legs,
a good athlete, right? So that's what I'm saying. Without knowing how Campana was feeling in that moment, right? If he was done, then then fine.
And we just
But
played on Saturday, so the fatigue was setting in. It was bad.
right, potentially. So I wasn't sure about that sub. I probably would have kept Campana on a little bit longer, but it worked out. And yes, Borgelin is a big, strong, athletic player, and so you can put the ball up to him. And if he does get the ball, especially in sort of a one-on-one situation, he can body off a defender and at least hold the ball and get the ball up the field and waste more time. So I had no problem with it. I didn't feel like there was anyone else on the bench that was going to come in and make a big impact. Franco Negri was there, but I don't know what his situation or what his role would have been. And then maybe lost in Sunderland too, but he would have just been fresh legs. So I thought the substitutes were good and were fine. And I thought Tata Martino just set this team up to win. And I want to give him a lot of credit for that. We talked about a couple of weeks ago going into this stretch without Messi, how Tata Martino is going to have an opportunity to prove himself and to prove his tactical abilities. And so far, so good, right? Down to 9 men, no problem. Yeah.
6 of 6 points.
Down to 9 men, no problem. Against the defending champions, no problem. So pretty good.
This is anything a good comment by Pseudo, by the way. Like he playing a hybrid 3-4-3 system. I think in the first half, especially, there were instances of it, and you may not have been wrong, especially when we were attacking on the ball. Our off the ball structure was 100% a 5-2-3 with Gressel out wide and sometimes coming in a little bit in. But on the ball movement would, like, Ian Fray got up a little bit. I thought Jordi Alba didn't get as high up as I would have expected him to normally, but there were instances where there were just the 3 in the back with a 4-man midfield and trying to build from there. But that was just so quick in transition that we barely saw it. It was very fluid.
Yeah, of course, when you have the ball, your fullbacks are going to get forward, and so the formation is going to look like it is. But I think on paper, it's definitely a 5-2-3. Anything else about this game before we get into awards? I know that Argentina is going to play. It's the opening game of the Copa America soon, and so we don't want to spend too much time. But anything else about this game before we sort of move on?
Man, let's get to the spicy part of the podcast.
Okay, it is time for awards. As always, on this show, we give out 6 awards: a man of the match, a Miami man of the match, a heron that flew north, and then 2 individual awards each. Since I went first on Father's Day, it is your opportunity to go first. Saur, who is the man of the match?
I can't take it away from this man, can I?
No.
Has to be Ian Fray. Comes back after a long spell off the injury. And I absolutely loved the plaudits he was getting on Twitter, on social media, from his team, from commentators. He had a phenomenal game, to the point where I would think he's the best right back in Inter Miami right now. And this is me, who loves Chelo Wigan.
In the history of the club, the best
in
right back.
In the history of the club, he's the best right back that we've had. No, I don't want to oversell his, performance, but he was nothing short of phenomenal. Really good on the ball, very, very aggressive off the ball, not afraid to get in the face of the Columbus front line. Made it difficult for them. Defensively, very astute, and moving forward, he was dangerous because he was getting out from the back with the ball. And when you say that Ian Fray can play with the ball, you're not lying. Ian Fray can play with the ball.
When I say, listen, he's a natural center back, and I know we got a question about this earlier. He's a natural center back, not a natural right back, but he's so good on the ball that you can play him out there, and he has the athletic ability to play as a right back. When you put him as a center back and you talk about his ability on the ball, you're talking about like top tier potential. Like go to a Big 5 team in a Big 5 league in Europe and like be a playmaker for them from the back. He's still got a ways to go defensively because he's missed so much time, but like that has always been in his future because of what he can do on the ball. And we saw a little glimpse of it last night. Listen, the first time we see him this season go from center back, carry the ball through the midfield, and then take a shot on goal from like the edge of the box because no one thought he was going to do it and he just was unmarked the entire way, and then it goes in for a goal, that'll be when you know Ian Fray has really arrived. He did that in preseason before the 2022 season, and it was awesome.
Could have had two goals as well, man. Could have had 2 goals.
Could have had 2 goals
in the first half.
He had that really nice pass to Robert Taylor that could have been an assist if Taylor scores there. But yeah, good passer, didn't turn the ball over unnecessarily. Won a lot of duels, was very good against Yaya Bo, who's very quick. And so he showed the defensive positioning and athleticism to get back and do everything he needed to do defensively. Even the advanced numbers, they really liked what he did today or last night. And so, yeah, we've been talking about this player for the last several months because he is this type of talent. And is it going to be consistent game in and game out? We'll see. It was very consistent last year. So hopefully he can stay healthy, but he's a difference maker. And can we just talk about his role on this team now? Because
he can play.
He's got to play,
yeah.
Right? Is like not every game because of health reasons.
Yeah.
But I think to me, he just passed Chelo Wigan. Like he's got to start against Nashville, I think, as a right back.
I wouldn't start him immediately against Nashville. I mean, yeah, we have a 10-day break. It's fine. Yeah, start him against Nashville.
As long as he's following the health plan that the medical team put out for him, I think he's got to play.
I will say this: if we want to put out our best team on paper, Ian Fray has to be in it. As simple as that.
Yeah,
that's it.
Do you think we see him as a center back because next game you could have Alba, Christoph, Aviles, and and Fray as your back four. Listen, there's not to get over the top, and we like to joke about Rafael Varane because we both like him, but just imagine a back four of Jordi Alba, Rafael Varane, Tota Aviles, and Ian Fray in like the next 2 months. That would be something. And he also fills the role of alternative right back. Right, when we were talking about a center back DP type player to come in this summer, we wanted someone that could be versatile along the back line, and that's Ian Fray. So,
do you think one of the reasons why we haven't gone for a backup right back is because we've always known that Ian Fray can play that position, and we're just waiting for him to come back, and we're like, you know what, we're not going to waste our cap money on another right back. So, yeah,
definitely, absolutely. I think, yes. Absolutely. I also think Tata Martino thought like we were going to play a 3-5-2 a lot. And I think he thought he had another player in Julian Gressel that could play as a right wing back. But I definitely think that he can be that right back. And I think for a while they've thought Ian Fray can come back and be that guy. Sudo with another comment. Ian Fray lived up to the hype. Last year, we had the rise of Kermaski and we had the rise of David Ruiz and Noah Allen. But I always thought Ian Fray was the most impressive. And even though he had the shortest amount of game time, he was the most impressive when he was on the field. And we saw why last night. And I love this player. He's my favorite player. And I forgot he was my favorite player because it's been so long. But yeah, so I'm really excited to have Ian Fray back.
We were all very excited to have him back. And I'm glad he's come back with an absolute raw, man, because he deserves it more than anybody else.
Okay. Our second award is the Heron That Flew North. This is the award we give to the player that was doing the wrong thing because any Florida Heron that flies north is doing the wrong thing. That's not what Florida Herons do. And that's why I'm going to give it to Benjamin Kermaski because I thought he was doing the wrong things occasionally last night. And it was similar to what he was doing in the previous game against Philadelphia, where his touch was a little heavy and he was working hard always, but didn't display the vision and didn't display the positioning and didn't display he didn't have a great first touch in this game as well. And so to me, I think Benjamin Kermaski has to get it. Last game, he got an assist. He worked really hard and he was available in transition on a couple occasions. And tonight, those positives weren't quite there, but still had kind of a tough touch.
I don't know, man. I think that's slightly harsh. I actually tried to lobby with Scotty here and not give out the Heron That Flew North award this time around because I thought everyone was fantastic and much needed in this game to win it. I thought it was a team effort and I don't think there was one single player who was bad. But yeah, if you have to give it to somebody, maybe. But I thought Benjamin Kermaski was fine. He was He ran a lot. He was all over the pitch. He was very important for the transitions. Maybe not as shining as Yannick Bright or Leo Campana or Julian Gressel, but he's always got this grit in him that I really enjoy. But yeah, I guess if you had to make a decision about somebody, it's not his best game.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of my point. Sometimes we give this award because someone makes a stupid foul or gets a red card unnecessarily or misses a bunch of great opportunities. It wasn't a bad game from Kramaski. It was just, a below average game, and in a game where everyone seemingly had a really high level game, I thought Kramaski was just sort of normal. Okay, what is your first award?
All right, I have a couple. Well, I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with the El Phoenix Award.
The El Phoenix, like a phoenix, but in Spanish.
The El Phoenix Award.
Okay, well, it's not going to Ian Fray because he's already gotten one. So it's going to Julian Gressel because he had a tough time and now he's back.
He's not back.
He's alive.
Back and he's alive and he's kicking. Yeah, man. When the chips are down, you're allowed to criticize a player. We've done that quite liberally. We've been quite critical of Gressel. We know his quality. We've always expected more from him. He's just always sort of fallen short from time to time. Yesterday, when he played, you have to give him plaudits for how amazing and effective he was. It wasn't just that he played well. He was one of the main reasons we were playing the way we were in that first half and the reason that we got those 2 goals. Because if it wasn't for his amazing pass the first time around with the corner, finding the head of Ian Fray, and then the second time around a little bit of a hustle to try and make sure he keeps the ball in, wins it again, and then puts in the right area for Campana to score. He could have had 2 assists, very, very influential, ran the midfield, very important to get out from the midfield and make something happen. And it just feels like he's a completely different player than 3 games ago, where everyone thought he was dead and buried because of how much he'd been played into the ground. I think the rest did him well. He definitely needed it. And yeah, I think he proved that he is here to belong. When the team needed him, he stepped up.
Yeah, I think there's 2 parts to it. And I had an award for him too. I had the Pin Drop Award because we have found his spot on the map, and he's been very effective there. Mark makes a good point. He's a different player when he plays out wide. When he doesn't have that defensive responsibility, he can just use his brain to find good positions so that he can get the ball with space in order to make dangerous passes either into the box or, he had another pass to Leo Campana that could have been a 3rd assist in that game. So really, really impressive game from Julian Gressel. He created 2 really good opportunities against Philadelphia. Didn't get an assist in either one, but they both could have been. And also scored the goal against Philadelphia. I made this note this morning, 199 minutes since he got benched against St. Louis City. So that's coming off the bench, and then the last 2 games against Philadelphia and the Columbus Crew. 1 goal, 2 assists, should be 3 assists, but basically a goal contribution every 50 minutes. He's been really good. He is exactly the player right now that we thought we were getting when we signed him. And I think he's going to continue to be this player for the rest of the Copa America because it's this role, man. This role it suits him perfectly. So, yeah.
And he plays well in space, and there was so much space in this game for him to actually marshal the troops around him. So, yeah, got to celebrate a player when he plays well.
And this has always been his thing, right? On set pieces, he's excellent because he's got a wicked cross. But in terms of the run of play, if you can get him on the ball with some time and space to find players open, he's going to do it. And we saw that last night. And
dude, that ball into Campana in the 31st minute, I think, was absolutely a peach, man. It was beautiful.
And listen, 7 goal contributions on the season now, should be 8. He's in a great run of form right now.
He's chugging along. He's chugging along. Yeah. All right, your turn. Best award.
My first award, And I have a bunch of really good ones, so I have to think of which one I want to give. Oh yeah, I'm gonna give the Electric Saw Award.
The Electric Saw Award.
No, sorry, I'm gonna give the Electric Drill Award.
Oh, the Electric Drill Award. That changes everything because it's a completely different tool. um, the Electric Drill Award. Huh. Has to go to, and I mean has to go to, Yannick Bright, because it felt like he was holding a drill in his hand and just running at players with it, and nobody wanted to get close to him because they were scared that they were going to get drilled. And okay, that sounds wrong. Yannick Bright.
It is Yannick Bright.
There you go.
Here's the thing. An electric drill is, it's a little gun that you press the button and it'll drill things in really quickly. And it's basically a hyper screwdriver, right? A screwdriver is a tool that you can use to get a job done. And that's what Inter Miami has done a lot this season. They've thrown out a screwdriver that can get the job done. But when you screw something in with an electric drill, it's both satisfying, it's done right, and it's really effective. And that's what Yannick Bright is, playing that sixth position in the midfield. He is not just doing the job, he's excelling at it. And by the way, he's electric when he's out there. He stops so many transition opportunities. He stops so much momentum that the other team has. He's not quite Diego Gomez in terms of like his impact in the midfield. And he's not the same style either, but he's like the next best thing on our team. I want him to play because we get better when he's on the field. And I have a good stat for him, but I'll let you sort of talk about him for a second.
I can't even, man. What do I even say? What more do I say? This feels like a player who has played for Inter Miami for the last 6 seasons. He feels like a veteran. His ball winning capabilities are absolutely insane. He just finds himself in the right spot, always being present. His pass accuracy was 32 out of 36 passes, 89%. Not a joke, especially for someone who doesn't need to be on the ball as much. I'm trying to look at 11 ground duels, dude, out of which he's won 8. That's mad. He wins the ball in so many spaces all around the pitch, and he's so essential for this team. We need, and I mean need, imperatively, an out-and-out destroyer 6 to be able to enjoy the quality that this team possesses. I don't know if Yannick Bright is the solution, but as of now, he's the only thing that we have. And every time we put him in that position, he stepped up. So for me, there is no reason why he shouldn't be one of the first people or one of the first players in that midfield setup when Tata Martino sets up his team every single game, regardless of our position, because he just offers so much in there.
Yannick Bright last night, 2 clearances, 3 interceptions, 7 tackles. I have a really cool stat that I just want to bring up. But since his first start against Vancouver, 5.5 clearances per 90, 1.5 blocks per 90, 2.5 interceptions per 90, 4 tackles per 90. I mean, he is all over the field. He's a true destroyer, and I love it. And by the way, he's perfect on aerial duels. I know you wouldn't necessarily think that because of his size and sort of how he looks on the field, but he's been perfect when he's gone up in the air for it as well. Here's my fun stat. Since his first game, so not including his debut, which was at the New York Red Bulls, and that game was a mess for everyone. But from that point on, we have given up 3 goals with Yannick Bright on the field. 2 of them was that stupid penalty from Chelo Wigan at the end of the New York Red Bull home game. And the second one was that stupid penalty by Tota Aviles against Vancouver that we won that game 2-1. The only goal that we've allowed in the run of play with Yannick Bright on the field since his debut was Wednesday night's goal against Columbus when Cucho Hernandez scored. That was the first goal that Inter Miami has allowed with him on the field in the run of play. He is so destructive. And again, remember, rewind 2 games, and Inter Miami was giving up 3 goals a game because we couldn't get the midfield figured out. The answer is right in front of you. It's right there. And we've been saying this since the preseason when we both loved the tools that he had. But definitely since he's come back in the regular season and since we signed him and since he started playing more, Tata Martino can see it a little bit, but he has loyalty to these other midfielders. But my God, the answer is right there. If you want to be a better defensive team, play Yannick Bright.
Name your top 3 midfielders for Inter Miami right now.
It's not about top 3. It's about the best balance. And
The
this is what I
impact
want
that
to
they've had.
This is what I want to see against Nashville. Diego Gomez, Sergio Busquets, Yannick Bright. If you play that midfield against Nashville, we will win that game. I have no doubt.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Assuming Diego Gomez is like healthy and the same Diego Gomez that we had when we lost him. So that's a fun stat, right? I did a little research this morning.
Insane. For someone who's in his rookie season as well. Jesus. That's mad.
And a lot of those, by the way, minutes have come sort of at the end of the game when Inter Miami's had a lead and the other team has just been launching, attacks at them. And he's been sort of a force in slowing them down. Okay. Give me your second award.
I still have a couple, but I'm going to go with this one because I think it's creative. So I'm going to call this the Genesis 613 Award. And you'll only be able to guess this if you have some sort of historical reference to biblical stories or if you're Christian.
What did you say? It's Genesis 6:13?
Yeah.
I don't know what that verse is, so I got nothing for you.
You got to guess the player, though.
Okay, hold on. Before you do, Pseudo puts a comment in the chat about Varane. And because you said this, when we finish our awards, me and Saur will talk about that situation for 5 minutes because we could talk about it forever. Genesis 6:13. I have no idea what verse that is, so I'm just going to guess it's Leo Campana.
No.
What is the verse?
Genesis 6:13 is the verse of Noah's Ark.
Okay.
And there's one player on this team who fits the bill, and that is Noah Allen. And the reason I want to talk about him is because I don't know how often we're going to speak about him, right? There are a lot of players from this game that we can talk about. Campana, Drake Callender, Kramaski, you've already spoken about, Robert Taylor. But Noah Allen, we don't get to speak about too often. So I want to get your thoughts on how you think he performed. For me, he did his job perfectly. And the advanced stats didn't really love him that much. He obviously picked up a yellow card. But I thought he was an integral part of that back line. And he played really well, man. For someone who hasn't played with the first team for so long, phenomenal. Great performance. Good shift.
Yeah, I completely agree. Listen, he got beat a couple times. Cucho Hernandez in the first half got past him on a sort of direct ball, and Drake Callender had to make a really nice save. And then, of course, Cucho Hernandez scored a goal. I don't know if I would necessarily blame Noah Allen. It was sort of caught in the middle where Allen saw that Busquets was a little bit behind him, so he had to make the run. But then by making the run, he wanted to put himself in a position to defend it, which actually ended up keeping Cucho Hernandez onside. It was a whole thing, and we probably could have dived into that a little deeper. But other than that, I think he was really good, especially coming off the bench for the first time in a long time, getting his first start in months. And the fact that he did all of that with a yellow card for much of the game, I thought was really impressive. In fact, throughout much of the first half, I was thinking to myself, okay, you have Ryan Saylor, maybe you do take off Noah Allen early so you don't risk getting him a second yellow card. But then if you take Ryan Saylor off, what do you do about Ian Fray? I was trying to figure that out in my head because I thought, I don't know if you can let Noah Allen go the entire way, but he settled in. And in the second half, he was really, really good. So, and by the way, he had a pass in the second half where he put the ball forward to, I think Campana, and he put it forward into space. And I thought to myself, oh my God, Noah Allen is about to get his first assist. And then Schulte beat Campana to it. But I thought to myself, like, good vision. And if that was just a little bit better timing, or if Schulte wasn't just so quick off his line, that could have been a really, really nice play.
And this could easily be a conversation about depth as well. Like on any other team, he would be above average. And the fact that he doesn't get minutes in this Inter Miami team just goes to show how deep this team actually is. But yeah, I was glad that he got to perform in a really crunch game under really heavy pressure. And he came out of it unscathed, man, undeterred. So good for him. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to mention him because I don't know when we see him next.
No, I had an award for him too, although I think yours is more creative. This was the least creative of my awards. So good award. I think he was worth mentioning. And I thought he was good. Like you said, I don't think the advanced analytics loved him just because of the yellow card and getting beat twice. But for a kid that's not even playing his natural position and is sort of rusty, hasn't played a ton lately, I thought he was really good. And, he helped us beat the Columbus Crew, which is awesome. Okay, my final award is the Key to the City Award.
Have you not used this before?
Maybe.
Has to be Drake Callender, right?
What makes you, what's the thinking behind that Drake Callender?
Because he has the keys to Fort Lauderdale and the Chase Stadium, and he locked it so the Columbus Crew could no longer score a goal. Something along those lines. He locked them down. That's what I mean. Yes, that's what I'm going to go with. He locked Columbus Crew down.
It's not Drake Callender.
Oh, damn.
I don't know if you know this, and for those that don't, you're presented with the key to the city as like his honorary guest, but it's the idea that you own the city. You're the owner, and Leo Campana is the owner of Columbus. Give him the keys to the city. He has played them so well over the last year and a half since the beginning of last season. 3 games, 4 goals and an assist. He owns that team, and he proved it again last night. He's 1 goal away from tying the all-time Inter Miami goal-scoring record. He had to score the same goal twice. He had an opportunity to score 1 or 2 more, put himself in good position, was really effective pressing from the front, and adds a dynamic to our team that we don't have when he's not on the field. And he deserved an award, and he's also excellent against Columbus. So give him the keys to Columbus because he owns that city.
It's not even funny how many players have stepped up in the absence or when we actually needed them to. And Leo Campana is one of those players. Like, brilliant. He's contributing a goal per game, isn't he, at this point, like in the last 3-4 games? He's really stepped up. And for anyone who says that he should leave Inter Miami, not going to get enough minutes, he's the future of this team, man. As long as Leo Campana's there, I think he's only going to get better. He's 23 and he plays like someone who's been in that position for God knows how long. He plays like a 35-year-old striker in all good ways, runs like a 20-year-old. But again, we wouldn't have won this game if it wasn't for Leo Campana. He held the ball up so well. He was responsible for putting the press up. He helped trigger the press when needed. And he provided that outlet ball that you could trust for him to hold on to. And he created chances and he got the goal that he needed. So we don't win this game if Leo Campana is not on the pitch. Simple as.
And listen, sometimes we do make too much of a deal of players that are just hustle and effort. Like, that's not enough to be a professional starting caliber player at a great team, right? But that's not what Leo Campana is. He is very technical. He can hold up the ball very well. He can shoot with either foot. He is an outlet for the team defense to pass to when they are in trouble. He can combine really well. He can drop into the midfield and be effective in terms of playing through lines. He can be on the end of passes. He finds himself in good position. He is a trigger for the press. He's very good at that. And by the way, in the 75th minute, right before he gets taken off, he's the guy chugging it back on defense to cover for Robert Taylor, who was exhausted. And he goes and makes that play and slows the transition opportunity down so that Inter Miami can get the ball out of bounds and then make the subs. Like, even in his final minute, he was making those dead sprints to the other side of the field to help his team. And also he scores goals. And so, and sometimes he does those like fancy footwork things, which is fun to see. Like, not everyone can do that. So I love Leo Campana, and I'm really excited for this next game when he ties that record.
I love it when we record a podcast after a surprise win, when nobody expected us to win and we actually absolutely show up. I absolutely love those podcasts because there's so much to talk about and we can go player to player and mention how good everyone was. But yeah.
So yeah, he gets the keys to Columbus, keys to the city. There's other guys that we're talking about though, right? I had an award for Drake Callender.
I had an award for Drake Callender.
He had some really big saves. It was sort of a vintage Drake Callender game. I know it's weird to say vintage for a guy who's still a pretty young goalkeeper, but yeah, this
He
was
came
like
off his line
2023.
really quick this game. He was
He
very
did.
sharp, very sharp, and two really big saves that could have potentially been a goal. One low down to him, and then another by using his legs. So he showed his skills all around, and I think the game style really suited him because he could go long when he needed to, and he didn't need to play around with his feet too much and just concentrate on saving the goals. So I thought he was really well. He played really well. And captain,
Yeah.
man. He's won 2 games as captain against two of the most unlikely wins that we could get this season. So there you go.
Yeah, he's been great. Sergei Kristov quietly had a really effective game, was at the heart of the defense. Sergio Busquets also in that back line. Again, he's not a center back. So when he goes back there and is still very effective, it's just awesome to see. And you can
All
see it's
IQ.
like the commitment to making sure your team gets the win in situations like that. It's awesome. Leo Alfonso, the hero from last game, not a ton to talk about there. Schneider Borgelin, he did hold the ball up and progress the ball a little bit. That killed some time. I don't know, anyone else that you feel like needs to be talked about?
I think we covered everyone, actually. Jordi Alba. We've not spoken about Jordi Alba. He was okay. He wasn't like, I didn't think he was a standout in this game, which is actually really surprising given that you circled him in your lineup last time around, I think, or we mentioned that he needs to be the leader when we're in this stretch of games because he needs to, step up. But I'm glad we didn't need him because he was able to have a quiet game, nice little, show on the field, and sometimes got up, but wasn't necessarily the focal point of our attacks, which is not a bad thing at all, honestly.
Better late than never. Deluge here in Monterrey. I don't know what that's about. Yeah, fun game. Awesome. I think this sets Inter Miami up really well, right? They're about to go on a 3-game road stretch at Nashville, at Charlotte, at Cincinnati. There's some interesting developments with Cincinnati, which I think is going to make that game a little bit more enticing for Inter Miami. But this is a team that's been great on the road. Nashville still doesn't have a head coach, so that feels like a winnable game on the road. Charlotte is solid, but not spectacular. This team with confidence can go get that win. In Cincinnati, they've been so effective because they have a really stout back three. Well, one of them is at Copa America with the USMNT, and one of them looks like he may have just torn his ACL or is having a serious injury. Not sure if it's season ending yet, but it's definitely going to keep him out of this upcoming game. So Matt Miazga, that is. That's a vulnerable team, and it's going to be like this game against Columbus where if we lose, it's no big deal because it was without our best players. But if we win, you're sending a message, and Cincinnati all of a sudden is going to lose a little bit of confidence. That game will be important for the standings, but we'll get them later with our best players. So psychologically, I think that's bigger for Cincinnati than it is for.
If we win that game, are we a shoo-in for the Supporter Shield?
Well, we play them twice more, so probably too soon to say. And listen, by the way, speaking of Supporter Shield, there was a time over the past couple of weeks where if teams won every game they had in hand on Inter Miami, they would pass Inter Miami in the table. And there was like 3 or 4 or 5 teams that were in that situation. Virtually all of them have dropped off. And the FC Cincinnati is the only team left that if they win their games in hand would pass.
Did
Inter
LA
Miami
win their game?
LAFC, they did.
Yeah. Oh, they draw. Ooh.
Oh yeah, you're right. They did draw against Austin.
Damn.
So
they lost their 7-game win streak. Whew.
Yeah. So there's the FC Cincinnati, the only team in the MLS that if they win all their games in hand would jump Inter Miami in the table. So you got to feel good about that. Real Salt Lake has been very good, but slowed down a little bit. LAFC gets a draw. The Galaxy don't get the result they want. And then in the East, the Red Bulls, NYCFC, they haven't really jumped up like they felt like they might a couple weeks ago. So good times for Inter Miami to just keep on chugging along and getting those dubs.
Yes, sir. Bring us the Supporter Shield. Bring us the MLS Cup. Bring us everything.
Yeah, for real. Before we spend the next 5 to 45 minutes talking about Rafael Varane coming to Inter Miami, anything else about this game you want to touch on before that?
Give me more of these days, man. It's phenomenal to watch your team perform when nobody expects you to. So great game. I'm glad everyone was able to join us for this podcast. I needed this discussion to try and vent out some of the joy that I was feeling after that game, and it was fantastic. Now let's talk about Rafa Varane coming to Inter Miami and making us an unbeatable force.
Yeah, Saur and I did an entire 35-minute conversation about this, and you can find that on the Heartbeat podcast. We've already had that discussion, so maybe we'll keep it quick. But there's no reason that Inter Miami can't be the highest bidder for Rafael Varane. If you can do something about Campana, get him underneath the DP threshold, then you can offer Rafael Varane a DP contract. And there's no team in Europe that's going to give him more than 5 or 7 million a year because of the injury history and the teams that, and listen, he's good enough to play at any team in the world, but the teams that actually give out that money are going to be scared away because of the injury history. Teams like Chelsea or Arsenal or Bayern Munich or PSG, and you wouldn't go to Barcelona. So the teams that could pay him that amount of money he's not going to go there just because of circumstance and situation. And so when you're talking about that next level of teams in Europe, they pay guys 2 million, 3 million a year. And guys that get paid more than that are very rare. And generally they're the stars of the team and, your star striker, your star 10. So Inter Miami can absolutely make a competitive financial offer for that player, or any player, by the way, as long as we're not competing against Saudi clubs. So there's no reason that Inter Miami couldn't attract Rafael Varane if he's ready to leave Europe and ready to leave that top level of soccer. And if he's willing to come to Inter Miami or come to the MLS.
Yeah, and we talked about this as well, that it might not just be about the money, right? It might also be about the lifestyle. The Inter Miami lifestyle is actually really lucrative to some of these players, and he might want to come here and retire and maybe play with some of the best players that this generation has seen in Sergio Busquets and Lionel Messi. And there are a few considerations that we can keep in mind. We talked about Inter Miami potentially moving towards a French core of players. That could also be another enticing factor. He has good relations with Beckham from his time in Manchester United, from his time in Real Madrid. So a lot of different factors go into play here. I don't know what his motivations are. They could very well be about money, but Rafa Varane doesn't seem like a player who wants to go and play in Saudi. And those links haven't really surfaced up. He's always mentioned he wants to end his career either at Manchester United or go back to RC Lens. And yeah, he speaks Spanish fluently as well, apparently. So perfect fit, man. I don't see how this is not going to happen. For me, it's just a matter of them announcing it now.
No. It's definitely not going to happen. Let's be real for a second. But also, why not? Like it could.
Why not? Make it happen. Make it happen, dude.
For real. Before we end this podcast, I just want to say a back line of Ian Fray, Tota Aviles, Rafael Varane, and Jordi Alba would be insane considering all the talent this team has. Definitely MLS Cup champions. Again, it's not going to happen. There has been only the most preliminary conversations, and so I don't.
Because we're obviously getting Sergio Ramos, not Rafa Varane. Obviously.
Well, maybe listen. I think we could add 2 players, right? You make sure Fray gets off the roster using some sort of injury exception or buyout or whatever, and then you have spots for 2 players, Sergio Ramos and Rafael Varane. What are we gonna do? Get another attacker or midfielder?
Yeah.
No,
or a number 6. We don't need a number 6. We have Yannick Bright.
You think we're gonna get a number 6 that's better than Yannick Bright? Let's be real here.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah. He is the Sergio Busquets regen, isn't he?
No, he's like, well, anyways, I honestly, I didn't say this.
He's like Wood Hullet. That's what he's like.
No, but seriously, he reminds me of Darlington Nagbe, who is one of the best players in MLS history. Like, no doubt about it in terms of his career accolades. He is one of the best players in MLS history. And I think Yannick Bright is that type of player. And he faced him head to head last night, and he was the better player. So I really.
Someone please clip that up and put it online, because at the end of the season, we're going to come back to this and we're going to be like, Scotty was a absolute genius in saying that.
Yeah. Genius or crazy is a fine line. But anyways, guys, There is no Inter Miami game this weekend, so no podcast, no pregame show. We will do a midweek episode next week, probably Tuesday, Wednesday type. And then we're going to do something this weekend, just like a little, I don't know, pre-recorded video. I don't know. We haven't worked out the details yet. That'll probably come out Sunday or Monday, just for a little something from the weekend. But really, we'll be back in full force for the midweek episode, and then our pregame show for the Nashville game next Saturday, and then we'll be back on a normal schedule. And I also want to let you guys know, if you are interested in more Inter Miami content, we do the Heartbeat Daily. It's a 20-minute podcast every morning. And so if that's something you're interested in, you can find that in your podcast feed. I'm Scotty. This is Saur. As always, it's been a lot of fun, and I want to thank you all for paying attention. And before we go, Saur has something he wants to say.
Yeah, Anton, stay safe, man. Apparently, Storm Alberto has flooded the roads at home in Monterrey. Maybe a curse for beating into Miami when you should have let us win. I'm kidding. Thank you so much for your comments, man, and stay safe.
Okay, guys, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.